Hey, what's up you guys? It's Simon. Welcome back to my channel. So obviously, as you can tell by the title for today's video, I have challenged myself to only use colors that are very saturated, just basic like CMYK or RGB, mostly CMYK, but I am going to be using like RGB in some places when it comes to like blending modes and stuff like that, but I'll get into that. I know it's a really weird time of year to be using like really saturated colors because, you know, it's autumn or fall or whatever you like to call it, which means it's time for very muted, kind of like desaturated, warmer colors. I don't really know what brought on me wanting to do this video. I think I was going through like Pinterest, or maybe it was like TikTok or something like that, but I saw something on some platform that inspired me to do this challenge. So this was a very spur of the moment kind of video, but I really wanted to go ahead and try it. So that is what I am doing right now. I have done this a couple of years ago, so I might like insert that on the screen to see you know, just how different the illustrations are going to look. I think I did it a couple of years ago for like breadth for my AP art class. So yeah. Anyways, getting into the actual rules of this video, challenge, whatever it is you want to call it. I obviously, like I mentioned, am only going to be using CMYK with, of course, the exception of white, because, you know, it's like negative space, something like that. You know, white isn't necessarily a color, so I am allowing myself to use that. Another rule that I have given myself is that I can't blend colors to make new colors, because then I obviously would have unlimited access to every color. I know in past videos where I've worked with limited color palettes, I have, you know, kind of taken shades and blended them together to get like a mid-tone and using that as its own, you know, separate base color so that I can get some more variation. But because it is CMYK, if I were to do that, I could create every single color in the you know, spectral whatever. I don't know how to describe this. I would be able to create every single color that exists currently in the world with CMYK. So obviously I can't do that because then that would negate the point of this challenge. That being said, I can, of course, strategically place colors next to each other and blend them to make certain colors within the illustration. Like if I were to place yellow and magenta next to each other to create orange or red or something like that, they just can't be used as base colors. I'm also allowing myself the use of layer modes, so things like multiply, add, overlay, etc., so that I'm able to achieve light and dark shades and get the most contrast possible. Again, I am sort of limiting this particular aspect because if I did continue to layer things over and over, I of course would again be able to create literally whatever color I wanted. You'll see that a little bit when I go into trying to color the sweater. I ended up making like this tan color by layering the pink and the yellow a couple of times, and then I went ahead and went back and changed it because it, one, didn't fit with the other colors in the illustration, and two, I felt like it was kind of cheating, and I really wanted to just showcase the main 3 or 4 technically colors within the illustration. So when it comes to the actual drawing, it ended up being pretty simple. I wasn't intending to make this video at first, obviously. Like I said, it was really kind of a spur of the moment thing. So this illustration was actually initially a warm-up. I was just kind of going through Pinterest and mashing together references and, you know, kind of just trying to get used to drawing for the day. I ended up actually really liking the sketch, and I thought that it was simple enough that it would make a really good candidate for this challenge. So getting into the actual process. I started with hot pink or magenta, whatever you want to call it, for the line work because I thought it would give the best results when I multiplied it. You know, I've mentioned in previous videos, when it comes to doing my digital illustrations, I always set whatever color I use for my line art to multiply, and I try to pick colors that I think would balance well with the overall hues I'm planning for the illustration. So if I want something that's a little more warm toned, I'll use like a red or an orange or something like that. If I want want a more cool tone, I'll go blue, green, purple, whichever. And I decided to do magenta for this one just because I thought it would play really well with the cyan that I was going to use for the skin tone here in a second. Actually, it's probably way already done by now, but anyway, that's what I was kind of picturing as I was doing it. I really liked the end result of the line art because I had like some really nice, I think personally, like variation in width and stuff like that, and it just was like really nice shapes, if that makes sense. It just was very pleasing to look at, which made me kind of scared to color it. But obviously I did end up getting past that, and then like I said, I knew I wanted to use cyan for the skin, which is also kind of ironic because I believe I also used cyan for the skin in the previous illustration that I showed you guys in the beginning. I don't know what it is about cyan that draws me to use it as a skin tone when I do challenges like this. I also noticed that when I draw kind of like non-human-y, kind of like fantasy race characters, I tend to use more cool tones for the skin. I'm really drawn to like cyans and minty blue greens. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I did decide to use cyan for the skin. Again, I wasn't sure what colors I was going to get out of it. I thought that if I layered magenta and cyan that I would get a nice purple, and actually ended up with primary blue, which I was somewhat expecting because I know that when you layer magenta and yellow you get bright primary red, but for some reason that logic did not apply in my brain. For magenta and cyan I was expecting like a really cute lavender, and again got primary blue, which was no biggie. I obviously managed to work with it fine. I did mess around a lot with the layer modes when I was working on the skin, just because I was really I wasn't sure how to get a good balance in the contrast. I'm going to say that word so many times in this video, but the initial like pass of dark primary blue was a little bit too much for me, and when lowering the opacity it kind of helped, but at the same time I didn't think it was quite the right shade that I was going for, and I can't remember what layer mode I ended up settling on, just because they're all merged together now, so I obviously can't look and go back and see what it was unless I pause this video. But I think whatever layer mode I ended up on was really nice. It wasn't quite that lavender, but it was definitely a little more subtle than like that dark blue. And I also noticed as I was going through, because I did layer it with the magenta, and I noticed as I was picking through different layer modes that the ad was so cute, not for the shading but for the highlight. I'd never thought of using like a bright pink as the highlight. I almost always go with like really not, what is the word for it, I usually go for like, is it analogous, where they're like right next to each other color schemes. So if I was going to do some highlight for a blue, I would normally use like a green or a purple for the highlight. I don't know, pink isn't far off from purple, but it's still not a color that I would normally tend to go for, especially not a really bright saturated pink. But I did end up going for that for the highlight, just because, as you know, like I said, as I was going through the layer modes, I saw how the magenta looked like on the add layer mode on top of the cyan, and I was like, that is really pretty. I'm definitely going to do that. So I did do a bit of that. I was really struggling trying to blend out the highlight under the eyes for some reason, but when it came for the more like harsh highlights like around the sides of her face and her nose and the corners of her eyes, I just thought that it was so cute. It was like a really nice color, and I was not expecting that, so that was really fun. One thing that I think I really struggled with as far as this challenge went was kind of figuring out where I wanted to place certain hues. I know I, of course, here's that word again, wanted contrast for sure, so I initially thought about making the hair and the tank top part of the shirt both like solid black, but then I started thinking, like, if I make the hair black, how am I gonna add colors in? You know, how would I do this shading? And I did way too much work making the line art on the hair cute just for it to be solid black, right? So I decided to wait a little bit and finish the skin before deciding what to do kind of with the rest of the illustration. And yeah, I really struggled, I think, when it came to the eyes as well, because I just did not know where to put yellow. I think cyan and pink are kind of, you know, colors that I always say pink, cyan and magenta, or blue and pink, whatever, are colors that I kind of tend to gravitate towards and use together, but I don't really usually incorporate yellow into that mix. Sometimes I do if I'm working on like a really like summery or springtime illustration, but it will usually be like a kind of dulled out yellow or like an orangey yellow, and of course for this I'm using like bright primary yellow, and so using that in cohesion, I guess, with the cyan and the magenta was really difficult for me, because I wanted to make sure I placed it in a spot where it looked interesting but also kind of wasn't taking away any intention away from the other colors. You know, I didn't want it just slapped in there for the sake of me saying, hey, I used yellow. So I thought doing it in the eyes would be, you know, kind of an okay spot for that, because they are smaller, and they're less kind of like, well, not less attention grabbing, but you know, it's different than if I were to, for example, make the shirt, the sweater part yellow, which I did attempt to do a couple of times. But yeah, I decided to put that in the eyes, and then I also put a little bit of that magenta. Again, I can't quite remember what the layer mode was. It was just something that was really subtle. It created kind of like a nice sunsetty look, which I really, really liked. I thought it was super cute. I was really shocked by the color that it made, so I did definitely keep that because I thought it was really cute. And then I messed around, I think, with layering the cyan and the magenta together for the shading on the eye, like on the whites and then a little bit on the iris too, so that I could get a purple, because I tried doing just cyan and I didn't like it. I tried doing just magenta, didn't like it. Tried doing yellow, I think, also didn't like. So mixing them together, I think, was definitely the go-to for that. So that is what I did, and I really like how the eyes turned out. I also messed around a little bit with the pupil as well. I played around with kind of the color that I would use for it. I tried like that dark blue, I tried a magenta, and I also tried cyan. I think I settled on magenta or cyan. It was one of those. I can't remember exactly which, but it was definitely like really striking, I think, in my opinion. I'm just partial to this illustration, I think, because I really liked the sketch. And then the last thing that I really, really struggled with was the hair. So, because her skin was so obviously blue, and the line art was magenta, it made it really hard for me to kind of decide what color to use for the hair. I tried to do it all solid black, and in the end I just didn't like it because it lost so much of I think the shape and the interest, that it kind of just looked like this black blob, which I think worked for the tank top but definitely was not working for the hair. It was super uninteresting. It made it like way less attention grabbing, so I definitely didn't want to do solid black for the hair, which led me to trying yellow. I did not like yellow either. Again, it was just way too attention grabbing. So with the black, it was like it was attention grabbing in a way that like it took all of the detail away. The yellow, it was attention grabbing in the way that like it almost made you focus too much on it, which I didn't like. So I decided I would try to go for a little gradient, but before I did that gradient, I also decided that I wanted to kind of change the line art color to cyan around the hair, which was such a pain because it kept conflicting with the line art around her skin, like the ears and the face in particular. So I had to keep going back and like color dropping the magenta and the cyan to make sure that the places where those two areas of color met were not blending into each other, if that makes sense. So like hiding away. So if I did a cyan too close to the face, then it would disappear, like there would be no line art there, which was not the vibe that I was going for. Even with it on multiply, it definitely was causing some issues, but once I got it all sorted, I went with pink for the hair at the top and then yellow at the bottom, and it made like this, again, a really nice, very pretty like sunset gradient. I didn't want to like add or multiply those colors on top of each other because both of them were colors that I kind of only used as like accents within the illustration so far, and I wanted to have a place where I would really showcase them as like, boom, this is that actual color, you know, this color is within this illustration. It's not just used as like a layer mode or something that's kind of hidden within. I wanted there to be you know, some emphasis on these colors, but again, both of them individually, as the hair was just too much. But having them both together and kind of blended in with each other really, I think, toned them down, which I think helped a lot. But the problem that I had then with the hair was, again, the shading. I didn't think that this was going to be too big of an issue at first. I thought I'd be able to just go in with the cyan and have it look really nice and pretty and, you know, subtle, but that did not happen. As you guys could tell, I started painting in the cyan and it was really dark, which I was expecting. I was planning on kind of like, you know, blending it out, maybe lowering the opacity and having it not be a problem. But then by the time I started kind of blending everything together, I realized that now it absolutely looks like this is a painting of Rainbow Dash, which was obviously definitely not my intention. Like, I was not coming into this challenge attempting to do My Little Pony fan art, so I definitely wanted to try and stray away from that a little bit, which is again where I started flipping through kind of certain layer modes and trying to figure out, okay, how can I pull away from this a little bit, because with the cyan, you know, layering, it was making like red and green, which just was really like very much rainbow. And again, I was trying to lean more towards CMYK anyway, so I wasn't too pressed about having to lean away from the rainbow hair aspect of it. I think I actually remember the layer mode was lighten, or was it luminosity? Which is weird. Luminosity in Procreate is so weird to me, because luminosity in Psy, especially if you're using like really bright saturated colors, it's basically like how Procreate has the luminosity brushes, or the lighting brushes. I don't know what they call them. I think they're lighting brushes, where it gives like almost a neon sort of effect, but it feels like with Procreate, luminosity almost like desaturates whatever it is you're drawing on top of, which is very strange to me. I don't see how it's luminous at all. Maybe I'm using it wrong, but it is very different to what I'm used to in Psy. Anyways, I decided to use the luminosity, and it kind of grayed out the illustration a little bit on that part of the drawing, which I wasn't, again, too mad about. I normally say don't shade with gray, don't shade with black, but when it came to me desperately trying to get darker hues without necessarily, again, having like a rainbow or using a different color, I thought it was okay because of how much saturation was in so many other parts of the illustration. I also, again, was kind of a little bit upset because when it came back to the tank top, I knew I was going to do solid black no matter what. So the problem came with how can I kind of tie in the black a little bit more, and that ended up being a pretty easy fix. I just added it in to kind of like give her a shadow root in her hair, and then I used that for her eyebrows and her lashes as well, which kind of made her look a little bit emo, I'm not gonna lie. But I did kind of, you know, I liked the look better than it was previously before I added the black, so her being emo is just, it's gonna happen. I like it. I appreciate it for what it is. She's very scene queen looking. I appreciate. It's not as if the previous version wasn't also emo and illustrated by, I think, was I emo when I made that? I can't recall. I might have been emo when I drew it, the original one that I did back a couple of years ago, because I don't think I drew it while I was in, I might have been in high school, but I don't think I was a senior then, so I might have been like 13, 14, so it was definitely probably still emo when I drew the first illustration. Anyways, yeah, so I ended up really liking how the black looked, and then the final part came to coming back to her sweater. So I mentioned before, and you guys have probably already seen in the speed paint, how I was kind of struggling trying to figure out what exact color I was going to be using for her sweater. I layered the pink and the yellow together, and it made kind of like a tan, which is what I probably would normally use when illustrating kind of an outfit like that. I would use either tan or white or pink. As you guys can tell, I did a little something. I layered it at some point to where it made like a pastel pink, and then I used the shading and the luminosity layer again and kind of did some desaturated shading on that. However, I felt like it didn't really match with the rest of the illustration. It was very different in tone and stuff like that. It was very desaturated versus everything else that was really bright and colorful. And I just didn't feel like it fit with the tone or the mood of the drawing. So instead, I decided to leave it white and kind of try to use like cyan or magenta or yellow to get the shading on that part of the sweater. Obviously, I think I ended up settling for like a purple and kind of tying back the purple in the eyes, because using just cyan or just magenta was a little bit too bright, a little bit too you know, attention grabby in a way that wasn't going to work. So I did land on a nice purple, and again, like I said, I used it earlier in the eyes, so I thought it was a nice tie into that. I didn't feel like it was like crazy random, oh pop, here's some purple that is nowhere else in the drawing. It was somewhere else, so I felt like it tied together really well, and overall I'm really pleased with how the illustration turned out. I think mostly my favorite part is the skin, which is funny because I did try out a couple of new like shading techniques that I don't normally try. I wouldn't say they're like techniques, it's just I put the shadows in a different spot than I normally would. I've been really experimenting a lot with shadows lately, especially around like the nose area. But I did do some messing around with the shadows on the side of the face, and then again, like I mentioned before, adding some harsher highlights around the edges, and I really like how that turned out. I don't know why I didn't do it in other parts of the illustration. I think I pretty much just ended up doing it on the face, but I still really like how it turned out. Overall, I think this was a really fun challenge. It was definitely very challenging, hence the term challenge. It took me a lot longer to color than a normal painting would, which I was really surprised by. I think most of it came down to me having to switch between a ton of different layer modes instead of me just selecting the color that I wanted to use and blending them together. It took a lot of experimentation and kind of like color theory and things like that. So I really enjoyed kind of the whole process of this. I hope you guys did too. I hope you guys like the illustration and maybe give this challenge a try. I know like with a lot of the challenges that I do on my channel, I'm like, yes, do this, you absolutely should. But I'm not really sure with this one. Like, yeah, it was fun, but also it was kind of a hassle. So if you think it's interesting, try it out for yourself. Definitely show me on Instagram or email me or whatever. I love seeing like artwork that you guys send to me, so if that's something that you want to do, feel free. But I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say absolutely try this, because while I did learn a little bit, I also didn't. It also was mostly just me going, these colors look really rough next to each other. I would rather just pick whatever color it is that I want to use. Anyways, I hope you guys had fun watching this video. I had fun making it. As always, I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons, Elise Thompson, Duran, Mandy, Schleeps, Kruhi, and Created by Twins. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for continuing to support me every single month. Speaking of Patreon, every single reward except for the digital download is officially up on my Patreon. So physical rewards like the print and the stickers are up. So if you are part of the Matcha Mail tier, those will ship out whenever, probably sometime soon. And then there's also the line art. I'm really proud of the line art. I can't talk about it because I can't show you guys, because the stuff with the line art, that's really easy to rip off of like a screenshot or something. But I will tell you, he's a very handsome man. The theme for Patreon this year is like kind of Franken characters. I'm calling it Monster Mash, but it's basically just like regular monsters that are kind of like patchworked, if that makes sense. So there's, as you guys can tell by the print and the stickers, there is a witch, a vampire, and what is the other one? A werewolf. So they're all their normal kind of creature-esque thing, but they're patched together and really colorful, and I think it's really fun. I've been really enjoying kind of experimenting with that. So yeah, if you're interested in getting any of the rewards, whether they be the downloadable ones or the physical rewards, those are up on Patreon right now. It'll be linked down in the description alongside all my other social medias. I love you guys so much, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye!